I'm here with Captain Dalitsch. Captain Dalitsch, can you tell us how you became interested in the field of medicine?
Well, it's interesting. My grandfather served for over 40 years in the Navy, and he was both an MD and a DDS, and he was a reconstructive facial surgeon. Like I say, he served in the Navy over 40 years, and when he passed away, my father was an only child, and all of his books and things came to our house. And my best friend and I actually discovered those books when we were in grade school, and we were fascinated by the fact not only could people be broken, but you turned the page and it told you how to put them back together again. So that was my initial interest in both medicine and the Navy.
And were there any classes or opportunities at Barrington High School that allowed you to decide to pursue this career?
Well, I don't know if there were any classes specifically that guided me toward medicine. Of course, I do recall the sciences were very strong here. I do recall one teacher in particular that was very much about diversity, not only amongst the people that you mingled with and learned from, but also your interest in life. And unlike some of my sports coaches who thought that the whole world revolved around their sport and anything outside of the classroom had to be that sport, this particular teacher highly encouraged us to experience everything we could in life and get that diversity of interests and sort of that multidimensional aspect of life. And that individual was actually my band teacher, Mr. Hans.
How did you balance the demands of your naval career with the educational years of becoming a doctor?
Well, it wasn't really a balance because they overlapped and intertwined. Like I said, my grandfather inspired me to do both. The Navy helped to pay for medical school. Once you complete that, you go out on what's called a utilization tour, where you start with a small squadron, basically as a non-board certified physician, kind of a GP, if you will. I chose to go the flight route and became a flight surgeon. And then after that, my original goal had been to go into ear, nose, and throat like my grandfather, but I literally fell in love with the aviation community and learned that you could get a board-certified specialty, Aerospace Medicine, and so in effect do fun things, not completely grow up, but do something professional. So I did my residency in Aerospace Medicine through the Navy.
When did you join the Navy?
Well, that's an interesting question. They helped pay for medical school, but I was able to do some civilian work after my internship. So I worked in an Eskimo village in Alaska for a while as a daytime ER doc and actually nighttime country music radio DJ. And then one day loaded up my pickup truck with everything I owned and drove from Anchorage, Alaska down to Pensacola, Florida, and started my active duty in October of 1994.
What skills did you gain as a naval officer that helped you become a physician?
Well, again, there's a lot of overlap there. I think the skills you learn in medical school in terms of patient interaction are key to becoming a successful physician. The Navy, we have what are called the core values of honor, courage, and commitment. And I think the honor, courage, and commitment that we devote to the Navy is just as equally applicable in the field of medicine.
How did you become interested in diet, nutrition, and healthy habits?
Well, aerospace medicine, so first of all, when people ask what you do and you say aerospace medicine, the first words out of their mouth are, wow, and then the second question is, what on earth is that? Well, it's not really on earth. What we deal with is human performance in extreme situations, extreme environments, so we study everything from deep sea saturation diving to astronauts. And a big part of that is human performance, and human performance, of course, includes things like sleep, diet, nutrition, exercise. And so it really came from my interest in human performance.
Do you have any advice you can give to young athletes?
Well, not only young athletes, but students and anybody in any walk of life. I think the number one most neglected thing, and the thing I get asked to speak about the most, is fatigue. And I would say the number one secret to human performance, whether you're an athlete or a student, is getting 8 hours of sleep a night. If you can't get 8 hours at night, as long as you accumulate 8 hours in that 24-hour period, and I guarantee if you start trying that, you'll see a difference. Interesting study a few years ago, they took 100 people who believed they were short sleepers, could get by with only 6 hours a night. They took all 100 of them to sleep labs to study them, and only one of those hundreds one of those, that 100 people was an actual short sleeper. So if you think you can perform at your peak performance after only 6 hours of sleep a night, chances are that you're only a short sleeper. Chances are only 1 in 100. So 2-week trial. I dare you to do it. 2-week trial of 8 hours of sleep and see what it does for you.
Can you tell us about any challenges you faced as a student?
Oh boy, at Barrington every day. It's interesting. My mind changed about halfway through high school. I'd always been strong in science and math. I'd always done well on the standardized tests. And somewhere along the way, perhaps as my music mind was developing, I'm not sure, I was always good at reading, but not so good at writing really elegant prose and things. And somewhere along the way, I started becoming more creative and developing more of my right brain. And I actually saw my standardized test scores and everything start to drop. I did that cliche reading too much into the question. And it wasn't until many years later, late in college, maybe in medical school, I started realizing what had happened in that I had started developing more of that creative side and had gone away from the science, not totally gone away from the science, it was still there. And in college, I came up with a way to counteract that. I started as a biology major, and after a year, I added philosophy as a second major, and then both sides started coming up. And I think it goes back to that comment I made about Mr. Hands about embracing everything in life. And I embraced both the creative and the scientific side, and that helped overcome my the change in my brain.
What is one funny or happy memory you have from being a student at BHS?
Funny and happy. I think there are probably too many to state just one. And let's see, I left here 33 years ago. Has the statute of limitations run out? I'm sure it's really all the friendships I developed, and a lot of them still continue to this day. But I'm not going to give you any particular story.
Do you have any words of wisdom you can share with our current students?
Well, as I stated already, 8 hours of sleep a night. Eat a proper breakfast every morning. Stay away from the extra junk like supplements and energy drinks, which are untested. Get in some good exercise and read a good book every now and then.
Thank you, Captain Dalitsch, very much for coming back and visiting and sharing your words of wisdom with the students at BHS.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure being had.